Hi everyone and welcome to the Blue Moon tutorial. First of all, let me welcome both Paul and Louis to the Patreon credit roll. If you're looking for early access tablature or notation files, then Patreon is still the way to go. But for anyone who wants to make a small contribution without joining up, there is also a PayPal tip jar from now on. Blue Moon is one of Tommy's biggest crowd pleasers, and I can tell there's a lot of people really anxious to get started on this song. All the info is in the tutorial, but as always, I slightly overdid it. Recording the tutorial took over 3 hours, and you can tell I'm really tired by the end of it. Still, all the information is there. I think all the playing shows what you should do, and everything should be more than clear enough to get to work. Also remember, you can make Blue Moon as difficult as you want it yourself. Start out by playing the verse and the chorus as simple as possible, and as soon as that feels natural, then just scale it up and start adding in those variations and licks that are described in the tutorial as well. As always, have fun, take your time on this one, and get ready to get to work. Okay, so all you need is an acoustic guitar in standard tuning, a thumb pick, and lots of time to practice. Let's go over the intro first. Tommy does this humorous skit whenever he plays the song live by starting with the bass player, then the drummer joins in, then the chords come in, and at last the melody comes in. We'll use this method as well for the intro, but you'll see throughout the rest of the tutorial that it actually makes sense to add in the drummer as the very last part instead of as the second part. But you'll see that as soon as we arrive at the verse. Now first the intro, one time through all the way, and then I'm going to come back and explain each section separately. Here we go. That's the full intro. Now, let's start with the bass part first. Often when Tommy plays this live, he will play this completely open, so no muting in the right hand yet. You're starting with basically a very simple bass line in C major. Starting on the C, 3rd fret on the A string, to the 2nd fret, B on the A string, to an open A string. And you're using ring finger, middle finger, open string, to the 3rd fret on the low E string, giving you a G, then swapping at this moment out to a index finger at the 1st fret to an F, F sharp 2nd fret with the middle finger, again 3rd fret on the low E string with the ring finger, and then an open A string, 2nd fret with the middle finger, and you're ending back up on that very first bass note again on the C. So really slowly. Ring finger, middle finger, open string, ring finger, index, middle finger, ring finger, open string, middle finger, and back to the first note. Now, this is all played in straight quarter notes except for the last 2 notes. Those are swung 8th notes. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. That's the first 4 bars. Then Tommy adds in the bass. Then Tommy adds in the drummer. What he does right away is he will start muting with the right hand. So if you have played those first 4 bars open, Tommy sometimes even likes to play it quite close or even above the fretboard to give it a bit of a different sound. And then as soon as the second part comes in, he will start muting with the right hand to get you that muffled bass sound. So with the fleshy, the thicker part of the palm of your hand just lightly resting on the bass string. Then he's going to add in a backbeat. On the 2nd and the 4th beat, he's always going to add in a click with the thumb pick. Now, if you watch Tommy do this live, it's quite a big movement. He sort of swings the thumb pick a bit more up high above the strings and then strikes it down a little bit harder. The really important thing to realize is that there is no force in this movement. It's all very fluid, it's very loose. You're still playing the bass part, and the bass part should in terms of volume be quieter than the melody on top. So don't go putting in a lot of force or a lot of effort into that back lick. It should be rather soft. Tommy plays a very low action acoustic guitar, so pushing that bass string against the frets doesn't take that much of an effort. If you do that, you get this. So what I do is I ankle the thumb pick slightly down. So instead of plucking straight down, it's sort of in an angle going down. And that's, if I strike it just a little bit harder, that's when the string will click into the frets. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Missed that last one there. But what you hopefully can see is that my right hand is completely relaxed. This is a very loose movement, no force whatsoever. It's very, very light. Adding that in with the muting and just picking up the tempo slightly. The trick is to really, as soon as you have that click of the plectrum against the frets, is to lift up the plectrum right away, because the bass note still has to sound out underneath. In the tablature, I marked this backbeat with an X above the bass note you have to play. So it's in the tablature always on the next string, but you're actually playing this click on the same string as the bass note. Bass note, click, bass note, click. This is all on one string. Let's add that first bass line together with the next 4 bars, adding in the backbeat, so you can get that sense of build-up in the intro. So that's the bass line. And now we're adding in the drums, as well as the muting. And then after those 8 bars, then the chords will start to come in. You're using 2 basic chord voicings. Over the C chord, you're using the pinky on the 3rd fret on the high E string, index finger 1st fret on the B string. We're keeping down that chord as you're moving down to the A open bass string as well, and to the G. So across that whole bass line, this is the chord voicing you'll have to keep down. And Tommy always uses 2 basic variations. He uses a lot more different things than that, but most of it can be sort of narrowed down to 2 basic variations, which is playing the chord together with the bass note. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, and maybe muting the chord right after by just lifting up the finger slightly. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, or playing the chord right behind the bass note. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. Really slowly, together with the bass note. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Behind the bass note. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Those are the 2 basic variations Tommy will add in throughout the song over those chords. As you notice, I'm leaving out the backbeat at the moment, but take note as well that the 2nd and the 4th beat are nothing but the bass note. There are no chords on the 2nd and 4th beat. We're keeping those 2 beats mostly empty to add in that backbeat more easily afterwards. So those are the first few chords. 1, 2, 3, 4. Then we're moving to an F chord with an added sixth. We're using the thumb over the side of the neck, first fret on the low E string, third fret on the D string with the ring finger, middle finger, second fret on the G string, pinky, third fret on the B string, index finger, first fret on the high E string. This chord shape will be moved around quite a lot in the next section. You could try and play this with a full bar as well if you don't like using the thumb over the side of the neck. But you will have to change a few things further down the line. We'll be doing some strumming as well a bit further down the intro, and if you're using a bar chord, then you will just have to pluck those chords, as you cannot let that A string ring out if you use a full bar. Right now we're moving from an F chord with an added sixth, thumb to the second fret. We're just shifting up that whole chord, so from F added sixth to the second fret with the thumb, to the third fret playing G with an added sixth. So back to that same open A bass string, second fret, and we're ending back up on the C chord. The fills on that F chord and G chord are the same thing, either on the chord or on the bass note or behind the bass note. So on the bass note, 1, 2, 3, and back to the C chord, or behind the bass note, 1, 2, 3. The same two possibilities. I'm showing you this because Tommy plays around with the intro all the time. He never plays it the same way exactly twice. So if you get this down, playing the chords on the beat or behind the beat, you can sort of make up your own intro. For those that are not comfortable with that, I will now play through the intro as notated down in the tab, and you can just learn what is written there. But it's always the same thing. It's either the chord on the beat or the chord behind the beat. Here we go. The only fill left. You're basically moving up that same added sixth chord from the third fret to the seventh fret, B added sixth, shifting up one fret further to the eighth fret. So you're getting 1, 2, 3, and you're ending up on the last eighth note of the fourth beat, which means that you'll never be back in time on the third fret to play that first bass note. What does Tommy do? He just leaves it out, and he starts the next bar straight away on the second beat, which means that once you're adding in those backbeats, you'll have to start that beat with a backbeat right away. This is what it sounds like. Slowly, if I count along. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4, and back into the first bass line. So that first C note is gone. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, and back into the bass line. This is a trick you'll be using a lot in the third and fourth verse. This is something that will happen a lot. So leaving out that first bass note on the C, third fret on the A string, and heading straight for the second fret. What is really important is you leave that first beat empty. Don't skip it, don't shorten it, make sure that first beat is respected in full. So one more time. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, and then we're ending the intro with just a couple of strums on the F chord, down, up, one fret up, and ending on the last upstroke again, one fret up on the G chord. That's the ending of the intro. Let me put that all together, starting from the point where the chords come in. Intro, or at least the full chord section. Maybe you have noticed that even in this section, still the second and the fourth beat are left mostly empty. Again, now we are adding in the backbeat again. And this is the method we'll be using throughout the intro. First, we'll be learning the bass line, the melody, the chords, and at last, the very last thing we'll be adding is the backbeats. Here we go. So the very same section with the backbeats added back in. So as you can see on that last fill, there's no backbeat, and on that last strum, there's also no backbeat. It's just up and down strumming. Take extra care if you play that fill. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2. And on that second beat, right away, the backbeat adding in on that second fret. That's the intro. Now let me try and play the full intro really slowly, all the way up to this point, and then we'll take a look at the verse right away. Adding in the drums. And the chords. The full intro. Don't worry if this sounds somehow a bit disconnected. Blue Moon relies heavily on a sort of oral deception that you're doing quite a lot of things together. You're actually not doing that much together. As soon as you pick up the pace slightly, that moving bass line and that backbeat alone is sort of a full accompaniment on its own, and adding in those chords will just flesh it out a little bit. So as soon as you pick up the pace compared to this one, it will all start to blend together and start to sound as you hear in Tommy's recordings. That being said, let's have a look at the verse now. One time, all the way through, and then the explanation. And that is the full verse. There's quite a lot to unpack here, so let's have a look. You're starting on the fourth beat with the melody. 1, 2, 3, 4, and then adding in on the first beat the same bass line we started out with. At the moment, you're playing the same descending bass line. So I'm playing the melody with a thumb pick. You could pluck it with the fingers as well, if that means less movement, or if you're not sure, you can get to that bass note straight away. But the melody played with the thumb pick does pop out more. And we're using the same chord shape right behind that second fret bass note. And we're trying to keep that chord on top as short as possible. And we're continuing to the open A bass string. And ending up the bar on the third fret on the low E string. And as soon as you pop that high sounding chord, you can take the fingers completely away. The rest of the bar is nothing but bass line. Moving to the first fret, thumb over the side of the neck. Then the next bar. That's a bit hard, a bit more movement, but you're mostly playing this bar. There are no chords, so it's only a bass line and a melody on top. You're starting out with the thumb over the side of the neck, adding in the index finger on the first fret on the high E string. As you move up that first fret to the third fret, again with the index finger, you're moving to a low E bass string. Adding in the pinky on the 5th fret for the high A melody note. Then ring finger on the 5th fret of the A string, index finger back to the 3rd fret on the high E string. Moving down the ring finger to the 4th fret and the index finger to the 1st fret. That's a bit of a stretch. That in itself is a bit dissonant, but you're resolving that tension straight away if you drop down the ring finger further to the 3rd fret and adding in the pinky on the 3rd fret on the high E string. And this is again your starting point. You're back on the same C chord and you're launching into the same bass line yet again. Let me put those 2 first bars back to back. Yes, that was the exact same thing as the first bar. So you're ending back up on this melody note, 2nd fret in the bass, again that short snappy chord on top. And that's the only difference. At the end of this bar, you're adding in the middle finger on the 2nd fret on the G string before you add in the thumb on the 1st fret on the low E string. This will lead into the next melody line. Middle finger, thumb. That's the next bar. So you're ending up with the thumb, 2nd fret on the G string, thumb over the side of the neck, and this is a bit of a frilly movement. You're adding in the pinky, 3rd fret on the B string, 3, 4. Then the second beat is moving the thumb up to the 2nd fret together with an open E string. Try to keep the rest of that fingering down. Let it ring out as long as possible. Adding in the index finger on the 1st fret, getting sort of, which is strange, a D minor chord with an F sharp in the bass, but we're moving up that F sharp straight away. To 3rd fret with the ring finger, and everything else is open right now. Back to an open E melody note, ring finger 3rd fret on the bass note. And you're shifting up that ring finger to the 4th fret, which gets the middle finger in the perfect position to just drop down on the 3rd fret on the B string. Open A string and an open high E string. This is maybe the most difficult fingering in the whole verse. So this is really a lot of things keep moving up while the melody has to ring out on top. Make sure you take your time for this part. So once more, really slowly, 3, 4. Luckily, it gets a lot easier. You're just ending up on an A minor chord, and we're not even playing a full A minor chord. We're just playing the 1st fret on the B string, 2nd fret on the G string. That's the melody. So you're ending up on those 2 open strings, 1, 2, and you're playing just straight quarter notes on that A string. Moving down the bass note to the low G on the low E string, ring finger, while keeping those 2 fingers down on top. Keeping down those fingers even longer and adding in the thumb over the side of the neck on the 2nd fret. Hammering on with the pinky to the 3rd fret. And if you have some basic fingerstyle experience, you have done this before, playing the bass note, hammering on, and as the hammer-on lands on the 3rd fret, you have to play another bass note at the exact same time. moving the thumb even further down to the first fret, playing a triplet on top in the melody, resolving back to a C chord. You could play, if that's possible for you, this is just a long bass note with a triplet on top. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. But you could also keep playing straight quarter notes in the bass, and that sounds like this. So right behind that second, third interval, you have to play another bass note. 3, 4, 1, 2. So 2 bass notes underneath that triplet. It's a bit of a trick. But once you get it down, you will be able to use it further down the road in the song as well, because we have a big fill coming up with the exact same polyrhythm, a triplet on top, and quarter notes down in the bass. Let me put that little A minor section starting from the A minor chord together, and then you basically have the full verse down. Back to the same bass line as the intro, with maybe a bit of a different ending, and ending on that G chord, and then right away you're launching into the second verse. Now let me play the full verse really slowly, back to back, everything we watched up until this point, and let's continue into the second verse and add some variations to that. And then there is one thing we left out up until this point, which are the backbeats. Now, in some sections of the verse, there are places where the second and fourth beat are only consisting of the bass note, which makes it easy to add in a backbeat. But there are a few other sections, like or. Those are quite busy sections where the second and fourth beat is filled up with melody notes or chord notes, and those are a lot more difficult to add in those backbeats. Often, when playing live, Tommy leaves them out himself as well. So it is possible, it is perfectly possible to play. So you see, it's perfectly possible to play the backbeats in those sections as well, but Tommy himself often does not. This is where I would put those backbeats. So there's already a few fills popping up in here. I'll explain those later. But as you can see, most of the time, whenever we're ending up in that intro bass line, that's where the backbeats will reappear. No backbeats? Here they are again. And here they are again. So they sort of weave in and out of the song. It is perfectly possible to play them all the way through, but don't feel obliged. And the second important thing is make sure you add them in as last. So first the bass line, the melody, then the backbeats to finish everything off. If you add them in too soon, chances are you'll make things a lot more complicated than they have to be. And this is really the icing on the cake. The song sounds fine without the backbeats as well. So that was the full first verse. Now the second verse I'm going to use to add a few variations. The basic framework is the exact same thing, and you can choose yourself whether you want to add in those variations or not. Some people are perfectly happy with just repeating that first verse all the way through without adding anything else, and that is fine by me. The third, fourth and fifth verse will be used to add in those trademark single note tommy fills that make the song sound so flashy. So first, let's have a look at the second verse. Most of it will be the same as the first verse with a few twists in there. So, as you can see, most of the melody is the same. There is a massive triplet fill in there. So we're starting with the same basic bass line. And now I'm starting that melody note together with the bass note. So before that we had... And now I'm going to stretch that top melody across that bar in full quarter note triplets. And this is the same trick as we saw in the first verse with that F chord. Triplets on top, da, 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 and quarter notes, pam, pam, in the bass. And this, now we're going to use that concept and stretch the melody in triplets across the bar while keeping the bass line in steady quarter notes. That's the idea. If this sounds in terms of timing like complete nonsense to you, then just skip it, move over to the rest fills. But for those of you who are intrigued, this is what happens. The fingering is the same thing. This is basically the only thing that changes, is that now you have to play that first fret in front of the bass note. So you first have to move down to the first fret index finger on the high E string and then add in the bass note on the fourth fret. And what you should hear in the bass line is 1, 2, 3, 4, 1. And in the melody you should get 1, 2, 3, 4, 1. That's the timing of the melody. From there on, it's the exact same bass line again. Tricky, but it is worth it if you want to add in some surprise variation. This is what it sounds a bit more up to speed. Same bass line. Little hammer on and pull off lick. All the exact same things. And then as soon as you end up on that bass note, the G, third fret on the low E string, you're just adding in a hammer on and a pull off first fret on the high E string with the index finger before you move over to the same fingering we used in the first verse. Fourth fret with the ring finger on the low E string, third fret with the middle finger on the B string. And that's maybe the biggest difference, is that if you play that fill, the melody note is pulled in front of the beat. Adding in the A minor chord only later. And then the last fill, moving to an F dominant 7th chord, just sliding from basically the 6th interval to the 4th fret with the pinky, from the 3rd fret to the 4th fret, back to the 3rd fret, and then ending up on the C chord with the exact same bass line as we did before. Only ending up on this ending, open A string, 2nd fret, 3rd fret to head into the chorus. Let me play all those fills back to back, really slowly. As you can see, one thing I forgot to mention, if you use that fill over the F chord, dominant 7th to 6th, the timing of that C chord can be pulled in front of the beat as well. Okay, so maybe a bit more up the speed, especially because of that triplet fill that sounds, I know it sounds really strange, played that slowly. And I'm going to add in the backbeats again on roughly the same places as I did before. So that is all for part 1. I hope you had fun learning the verse. If you're looking for more info on the chorus, other variations on the verse as well as the ending, then please follow the link towards part 2. Have fun, take care, and bye bye.